She had exactly 72 hours. 72 hours to find $180,000. Or watch her father die. She was not a desperate woman. She was not a reckless woman. She was not the kind of woman who made decisions she wasn't proud of. But she was a daughter. And daughters do things for their fathers that the world would never understand. So when her phone rang that night, and the voice on the other end said, "There is a billionaire in this city who needs a wife, not forever, just 90 days, and he is willing to pay $2 million. She didn't say yes because she was greedy. She said yes because in that moment, $2 million was the sound of her father's heart still beating. What she did not know, what nobody told her, was that the moment she walked through those mansion gates, someone in that house had already decided to destroy her. And the one man who had the power to save her was the same man who would look her in the eyes and look away. This is the story of Zara Mitchell. Stay with me, because I promise you, by the time this story is over, you will never look at the word trust the same way again. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to hear from you. And if you have not subscribed yet, hit that button right now so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. It was a Tuesday night when Zara Mitchell's world cracked open. Not with a bang, not with a dramatic scene, just a piece of paper. 3 words at the top: insurance claim denied. And below it, in red ink, handwritten, like someone thought the color of blood was appropriate, 72 hours. She sat in that hospital corridor for a long time. Plastic chair, flickering light above her. The sound of a heart monitor somewhere down the hall. Steady, steady, steady. And she thought, how long before that sound stops being steady? The doctor had already said everything doctors say when they have run out of good news. We've done everything we can. The surgery cannot wait. Payment must be confirmed. She heard all of it. She nodded at all of it. And the moment the doctor walked away, she stood up, pushed open the door to room 114, and went to see her father. Papa Joseph was 68 years old. He had taught school children for 30 years. He had raised Zara alone after her mother left, never once complaining, never once making her feel like a burden, never once letting her go to bed without knowing she was the most loved child in the world. He was lying in that hospital bed looking smaller than fathers are supposed to look, but his eyes were still the sharpest thing in the room. He looked at his daughter's face the moment she walked in, and he read every single thing she was trying to hide. Because that is what good fathers do. They see you, even when you are trying not to be seen. "Come sit down, my dear," he said. She sat. She tried to smile. It almost worked. "What did the doctor say?" "He said you're doing well." Papa Joseph was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Zara, I have been your father for 38 years. Don't waste a lie on me." She told him the truth. $180,000. 72 hours. He listened. He nodded slowly. And then he said the thing that broke her completely while somehow keeping her standing. "Sell the house." "Papa, it's just a building." "You are not just a building." She told him the house wouldn't clear enough after the bank. He nodded again. And then, very quietly, very gently, the way only a man who loves someone completely can say something this painful, he said, "My dear." And Zara said, immediately, without even a breath between his words and hers, "Don't say that. I have lived a good life." I said, "Don't say that." She held his hand, hard. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were dry. She was not going to fall apart in front of him. She kissed his forehead. "Sleep, Papa. I'll be back in the morning." She walked out, closed the door behind her, and there, alone in that empty corridor, she slid down the wall until she was sitting on the cold hospital floor, knees pulled to her chest, face in her hands. For exactly 30 seconds, she let herself fall apart. 30 seconds, then she wiped her face, stood up, and took out her phone. Because Zara Mitchell did not stay broken. She just got back up. Every single time. Her best friend Linda was waiting when she got home. Linda, who always showed up. Linda, who always had a plan. Linda, who knew Zara better than anyone, and therefore knew immediately that this was not a situation with an easy answer. They went through every option. Fundraisers, loans, selling everything. The numbers never added up. And then Linda got very quiet. The kind of quiet that means someone is about to say something they have been debating for 10 minutes. My client, Linda said slowly. Cole Harrington. Zara stared at her. The Cole Harrington? Billionaire. Yes, that one. Linda explained everything. The grandfather's will. The condition, legally married before inheriting the company, the woman who was supposed to sign the contract had backed out that very morning. Cole had 30 days to find someone, or his cousin Marcus would inherit controlling shares. A contract marriage. 90 days. Public appearances. Guest suite in the mansion. Completely legal, completely temporary. How much? Zara asked. Linda looked at her very carefully. $2 million. The apartment went silent. Zara walked to the window, looked out at the city. She had spent her whole life being honest. She had worked hard. She had trusted the right people, or at least she thought she had, until her business partner took everything she had built and disappeared into the night with it. And where had honest gotten her? Sitting in a hospital corridor with a piece of paper that said 72 hours. She turned around. Set up the meeting. Harrington Global Headquarters was the kind of building that made you feel small before you even walked through the door. Glass and steel and silence. Everything designed to remind you of exactly how much power lived inside it. Zara walked through that lobby in her best navy dress. Simple, clean, unimpressive by this building's standards. And she walked like she belonged. Because Zara Mitchell had decided something in the elevator on the way up. She was not going to be small today. Not for anyone. Not even for a billionaire. The elevator opened onto the top floor. And there he was. Cole Harrington. Now, I want you to understand something about Cole Harrington. He was not what people expected. He was not loud. He was not flashy. He did not perform his wealth the way some men do, with watches and attitude and the need to make sure everyone in the room knows they are in the presence of someone important. Cole Harrington was something more dangerous than that. He was still. The way deep water is still. The way a room goes still right before something significant happens. He looked up from his papers when Zara walked in, and he simply watched her. Light brown skin, sharp jawline, dark eyes that missed absolutely nothing. Sit down, he said. No good morning. No please, just sit down. And before Zara could even open her mouth, he opened a folder and told her exactly who she was. Her name, her age, her profession, her business partner who had stolen from her, her credit score and why it was low, her father's name and which hospital he was in. Everything. He closed the folder. Why should I choose you? And Zara, without blinking, said, because I am the only one sitting in that chair. Something moved behind Cole's eyes. Not quite a smile, but the cousin of one. The terms were simple. 90 days. Move into the estate. Attend all events as his wife. Sign a full non-disclosure agreement. At the end, quiet divorce. $2 million. Zara had one condition. Her father's surgery. In the next 48 hours. Paid in full. Before she signed a single thing. Cole looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, Benson, call St. Mary's. Full payment for Joseph Mitchell's surgery. Today. Just like that. $180,000. Like he was ordering lunch, Zara picked up the pen. But before she signed, Cole said one more thing. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. I don't need a friend. I don't need conversation. I need a signature and a presence. Are we clear? Zara looked at the contract, looked at him. Perfectly, she signed. And somewhere across the city, a phone rang in a hospital billing office, and a surgery was confirmed, and a father's heart got a little more time. That was the moment everything began. The Harrington estate was another world. Gates and fountains and gardens that seemed to go on forever. A mansion that looked like it had been designed to make sure you never forgot who owned it. Zara arrived with one suitcase. Just one. The same one she would leave with. The first thing she noticed when she walked through the entrance hall was a large vase of flowers near the staircase. Beautiful flowers. Dying flowers. Nobody had watered them in days. She stopped. Benson, a good man with kind eyes and a stocky frame and 30 years of loyalty to this family, offered to have them removed. No, just bring me some water. She didn't know it then, but that moment, that small, simple, instinctive moment, was the moment this house began to change. The second thing she noticed was Marcus Harrington coming down the staircase. Cole's cousin, charming in the way that immediately makes you check your pockets. He smiled at her like she was something he had already decided the value of. Simple taste, he said, looking her over. Interesting choice for Cole. He said it pleasantly. The way people say unpleasant things when they want you to smile and accept it. Zara smiled. Simple things, she said, tend to last the longest. Marcus stared at her. His smile didn't move, but something behind it did. He walked away, and Benson, quiet, observant Benson, leaned close to Zara and said simply, "Be careful of that one." Zara filed that away. She was very good at filing things away. That night, alone in the beautiful cold guest suite that was nothing like a home, she unpacked her one suitcase, and at the very bottom of it, she found the small framed photo she always carried, her and Papa Joseph, outside a market somewhere, both of them laughing at something the camera couldn't capture. She was maybe 20 in the photo. He looked like the happiest man alive. She placed it on the nightstand. Then her phone rang. It was Linda. The hospital called. Surgery is confirmed for tomorrow morning. Zara, they paid it. All of it. In one transfer. Zara sat on the edge of the bed. She pressed her hand over her mouth. "Are you okay?" Linda asked. "Yes," Zara said. "I'm okay." She hung up, looked at the photo of her father, and whispered, "It's going to be okay, Papa. I promise." In that enormous mansion, in that cold, beautiful room, it was the most human moment of the night, and nobody saw it but her. By day 3, the house was already beginning to feel her presence. She was up at 5 in the morning. She could never sleep in strange places, moving through the enormous kitchen like she had cooked in rooms like this her whole life. The smell of food filled the house slowly. Eggs, fresh bread, something with cinnamon. Benson appeared in the doorway in his pajamas, completely surprised. They cooked together in the early morning darkness. Two people who had no particular reason to be comfortable with each other, quietly becoming comfortable with each other. At 7:30, Cole came downstairs, suit on, ready for another 17-hour day. He stopped at the dining room door. The table was set. There was food, real food, not catered, not delivered, cooked by human hands in his kitchen. He sat down, took one bite. His face didn't change. He took another bite, and another. He finished the entire plate. He stood up, straightened his jacket, walked toward the door, then stopped. Without turning around, he said, "Tell her the eggs were acceptable." Benson smiled so hard he had to look at the ceiling. "Of course, sir. Acceptable." From Cole Harrington, that was practically a standing ovation. On day 5, Zara found the East Wing, and behind the door at the end of the hallway, she found Mrs. Harrington, Cole's mother, 70 years old, silver white hair in an elegant updo, sharp eyes that were, unmistakably, her son's eyes. She looked at Zara the way you look at something you're not sure is real. "You're the girl," she said. "I'm Zara," Zara said. "It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am. Come in then. Don't stand in the hallway like a salesperson." The East Wing was completely different from the rest of the house. Books everywhere, real photographs on the walls, messy, personal, loved. A garden visible through tall windows. This was not a museum. This was someone's actual life. They sat across from each other with cups of tea. And Mrs. Harrington, who had not survived 70 years by being polite when there were more important things to be, looked at Zara and said, "How much is he paying you?" Zara met her eyes. $2 million. And your father needed surgery. Zara went very still. "I read people," Mrs. Harrington said gently. "It's the only skill I have left. You didn't come here for the money. You came here for him." A long pause. "How is he recovering?" "The surgery went well," Zara said quietly. "He goes home next week." "Good." Mrs. Harrington looked out the window. "My son is not easy to know," she said. "He was not always like this. When his father died, something in Cole closed. Like a house with all the windows shut. You can see the light inside, but you cannot get in." "I'm not trying to get in, ma'am," Zara said. "I'm just here for 90 days. Mrs. Harrington looked at her with something very close to sadness. "Yes," she said softly. "That's what you think right now. Day 7, the garden. Zara was there every morning now, watering, tending, talking to the flowers the way her father had taught her to. Plants listen, Papa Joseph always said. Better than most people. She was so focused, she didn't hear Cole come out, didn't hear his footsteps on the path, only felt, after a moment, that particular feeling of being watched by someone who is not trying to hide it. I can feel you staring, she said, without turning around. Cole walked closer. He was not in his suit today. Dark trousers, simple white shirt. He looked almost human. He looked at the flowers. These were dying last week, he said. They just needed attention, she said. They stood there, not talking, not performing, just standing in a garden together, and it was the first moment in this house that felt real. My mother planted these, Cole said, 20 years ago. They're beautiful. Another silence. You notice a lot of things, he said. Old habit. My father says the people who notice the small things are the ones who actually care about the world. Cole looked at her. Something shifted in his face. Just barely. Just enough. Your father sounds like a wise man, he said. He is the wisest person I know. A pause. And then, as if he suddenly remembered who he was supposed to be, the walls came back up. The board dinner is Friday. You'll need to be ready by 7. He walked back inside. Zara watched him go, then looked back at the flowers, and smiled, very quietly, to herself. Now, while Zara was tending gardens and cooking breakfasts and slowly, without meaning to, bringing warmth back into a house that had forgotten it, Marcus Harrington was watching. And Marcus Harrington did not like what he was seeing. You need to understand something about Marcus. He had spent 15 years waiting for that company. 15 years of watching Cole get everything, the attention, the position, the inheritance, while Marcus stood just outside the circle of it, close enough to see, far enough to never touch. In his mind, he had earned this. He had sacrificed for this. He was owed this. And now, one woman with one suitcase was standing between him and everything he believed was his. He sat in his private study with Diana, his girlfriend, a woman who followed his plans and increasingly hated herself for it. And he made a decision. She's getting too comfortable, he said. And Damien is starting to notice her. He was going to plant evidence. Corporate espionage. Make it look like Zara had been leaking Cole's most valuable business secrets to their biggest competitor. Cole will have no choice but to remove her immediately, Marcus said. By the time she understands what happened, she'll already be gone. He smiled, the coldest smile in any room he had ever been in, and Diana, sitting across from him, looked at her hands. Something was stirring in her conscience, something Marcus could not see because he had stopped looking at people a long time ago. The board dinner came. Zara wore a simple dark green dress, hair down, small gold earrings. She was the least decorated person at that table, and somehow, the most noticed. The questions came quickly, polite on the surface, pointed underneath. How long have you and Cole known each other? Under the table, Cole's hand rested very lightly on hers. A signal. Be careful. Zara didn't need it. She smiled at the board member and said, long enough to know that he takes his coffee black, never eats breakfast unless someone makes him feel guilty about it, and believes a meeting scheduled for 1 hour should end in 45 minutes. Laughter around the table. Cole looked at her sideways. That almost smile again. She knows you well, Cole. Better than most, he said. And at the far end of the table, Marcus raised his glass with that wide, perfect, empty smile. To Cole and his lovely new wife. May the next 90 days be everything you both expect. Sweet words. Knife inside every one of them. Zara raised her own glass, met his eyes across the length of the table. Thank you, Marcus. That's very kind. Full warmth, steady eyes. Marcus's smile stayed exactly the same, but his jaw just slightly tightened. Round 1, Zara. Something was happening between Cole and Zara. Neither of them had a name for it. Neither of them was looking for it. But there it was. She started bringing food to his office when he worked past midnight. He started asking her questions, real ones, not polite ones. He had his investigator track down the business partner who had stolen from her, without her asking, without making it a big thing. She found out 3 days later from Linda. She went to his office door. You didn't have to do that. He was already looking back at his papers. Eat something before you go to sleep. You were in the garden at 5 this morning. That was Cole Harrington. He showed care the way some men show it. Not with words, not with gestures, but with action. Quiet, specific, deliberate action that said, "I noticed you," without ever having to say it out loud. And on day 31, in the garden, they had a conversation that changed everything. "What was your grandfather like?" Zara asked. Cole was quiet for a moment. "Impossible, stubborn, usually right. He had this saying, 'A man who builds alone builds walls, not homes.' Do you believe that? I believe a man who builds alone has complete control over what gets built and what gets destroyed," Zara said, gently, simply, the way she always said things that nobody else would dare say, without anger, without accusation, just truth offered quietly, like a glass of water to someone who didn't know they were thirsty. Cole looked at her. "You do that a lot," he said. "Do what?" "Say exactly what people don't want to hear in a way that makes them unable to be angry about it." And Zara laughed. A real laugh. Unexpected. Warm. Completely unguarded. It surprised him so much he forgot for a moment to be closed. "My father calls it my most dangerous quality," she said. "I think he might be right," Cole said. They walked in silence for a while. Then he said, "Tell me something. Why interior design?" And she told him. About believing that how a space feels changes how people feel inside it. About walking into a room and feeling afraid, or calm, or lonely, or at home, without knowing why. About wanting to understand that, and then use it. Cole stopped walking. "That's why you rearranged the flowers when you first arrived. This house was beautiful," she said, "but it felt like a museum, like nothing alive was supposed to be here." A long pause. Cole looked at the flowers. "It has felt different," he said, "these past few weeks." "The house? Different how?" He searched for the word. "Warmer," he said, and standing there, in that garden, with the morning light crossing everything, something began between them, something neither of them would name, something neither of them was ready for, something that was going to cost them both, more than either of them knew. Marcus moved fast. A hired man named Shaw, a fake email account built in Zara's name, automated messages, sent at perfect intervals, carrying Cole's most sensitive business strategies directly to their biggest competitor. The trap was clean. The trail led straight to her, and Marcus sat back and waited for the fire. It didn't take long. Cole was in a meeting when Benson appeared with an urgent face. The company's Asian expansion strategy. Leaked. Published. Already in the hands of Belmont Industries. The email trail, straight to an account registered in Zara's name. IP address, the estate. Cole went very still. The way deep water goes, still right before the storm hits the surface. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, he said. And he went to find Zara. She was in the garden. Of course she was in the garden. Watering the flowers. At peace. Completely unaware. She turned when she heard him. And her face opened into a smile. That smile. The one that had been slowly dismantling every wall he had built. And then she saw his expression. And the smile disappeared. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer with words. He handed her a tablet. She read, and her face went through every stage of something terrible. Confusion first, then shock, then horror. "I didn't send these. Your name is on every one. Cole, I didn't send these. I don't even know what Belmont Industries is. I have never. The IP address is from this house, from your suite. Then someone used my name. Someone created a fake account or, the board is calling an emergency meeting in 2 hours. The Asian expansion plan is already in their hands. This company is going to lose $20 million. Zara stood up. "And you think that someone is me?" Cole said nothing. And that silence, that terrible, devastating silence, was its own answer. "Cole." She stepped closer. "Look at me. Have I done one single thing in this house that would make you believe I am capable of this?" He was fighting himself. She could see it. The part of him that knew her, the part that had been building, quietly and carefully, over 31 days, was fighting the part of him that had learned, a long time ago, to trust evidence over people. "I can't ignore this, Zara. So you're going to ignore me instead." Silence. "I think it's best if you don't." Her voice was steady, completely steady. You're about to ask me to leave this house for something I didn't do, and you know I didn't do it. I can see it on your face. But you're going to do it anyway, because it's easier than fighting for the truth. Cole looked away. That was all she needed to see. She went upstairs. She packed her one suitcase, the same one she arrived with. She picked up the small photo of her and Papa Joseph. She came back downstairs. Cole was standing in the hallway. He looked at the suitcase. Something crossed his face. Pain, quickly buried, the way he buried everything. She stopped at the door. I walked into this house honestly, she said. I am walking out the same way. A pause. I hope whatever you're protecting was worth what you just lost. She opened the door, walked out. Cole stood in the empty hallway, and the house, immediately, felt it. Something went out. Something that had taken 31 days to build and 3 minutes to destroy. Marcus opened a bottle of wine that evening, and just like that, he said, raising his glass, "She's gone." Diana sat across from him. She did not raise her glass. She was thinking about a woman who had done nothing wrong, a woman who had walked into a house with one suitcase and honest hands, and had been destroyed by someone who never even learned her name properly. She didn't do anything wrong, Diana said quietly. She was in my way, Marcus said. That is wrong enough. Diana looked at her hands and made a decision she would not tell Marcus about. Not yet. Zara sat at her father's small kitchen table that night. She told him everything. He listened. He never once interrupted. When she finished, the kitchen was quiet. "Did you do it?" he asked. "Papa, I know you didn't. I'm asking so you can hear yourself say it." "No, I didn't do it." "Then the truth already exists," he said. "It just hasn't been found yet." She wrapped her hands around her cup. He didn't believe me. I looked at him and he looked away. That's what hurt. Not the accusation, not being thrown out. He looked away. Papa Joseph was quiet for a moment. "Tell me something, Zara. In those 30 days, how did he treat you?" And Zara, slowly, told him. About the surgery paid before he even knew if she was trustworthy. About the investigator sent after her stolen money without her asking. About the way he learned how she drank her tea. About the garden conversations and the late-night offices and the almost smiles and the one word, warmer, that he had searched for like it cost him something to find it. She stopped talking. Papa Joseph looked at her. "Zara, don't. My daughter. Papa, I am not in love with Cole Harrington." Papa Joseph smiled very gently into his tea. "Of course not," he said. A long pause. "I'm not," she said again, quieter this time. "Drink your tea," he said. And the kitchen was warm, and the night was long, and somewhere across the city, a house that had finally learned to feel alive was going quiet again. The flowers died. 3 days after Zara left, every single one. Benson found Cole standing in the garden one morning, just standing, looking at them. The kitchen was cold again. The dining table was set with delivered food that nobody had asked for. Cole worked longer hours, ate less, spoke to almost no one. Benson stood beside him in the garden, and after a long silence, Cole asked, "Do you think she did it?" Benson didn't hesitate. "No, sir, I do not." "The evidence. I have worked in this house for 11 years. I know what a person who cares about something looks like, and I know what a person who is performing caring looks like." Zara Mitchell was not performing. Cole looked at the dead flowers. "Sir," Benson said, "there's something else." Benson had been doing his own investigation. Quietly, carefully. The way good and loyal people do things, without being asked, without making it about themselves. The email timestamps were wrong. 17 minutes apart. Every single one. Perfect intervals. Human beings don't work that way. Automated systems do. And the IP address. It wasn't from Zara's suite. It was from the East guest room. The one Marcus used when he stayed at the estate. Cole sat at his desk. He opened the folder. He read every line. His face went through several things. Disbelief, realization, and then something colder than anger. Something more dangerous. Clarity. He picked up his phone. "Get me Franklin." While Cole was reading the truth in his office, Diana was sitting alone in Marcus's apartment, staring at her phone, thinking about a woman who had done nothing wrong, thinking about the night Marcus handed her the plan with that cold, satisfied smile. Thinking about what he had said, she was in my way. That is wrong enough. Diana picked up her phone. I need to speak to someone at Harrington Global, she said. My name is Diana Reeves. I have information about the leaked strategy and the woman who was wrongly accused. The walls were closing in on Marcus from two directions at once, and he had no idea. Marcus walked into Cole's office expecting a normal meeting. He saw Cole's face and knew. Cole did not raise his voice. He never raised his voice. He simply slid the folder across the desk and watched Marcus's perfectly constructed composure begin, very slowly, to crack. Shaw, your hired man. He talked, Marcus. Diana talked. The fake email account. The automated timing. The IP address from your guest room. Marcus tried. He was a man who had always had words ready. Always had an explanation. Always had a way out. Cole. Whatever you think you've found, I found everything. Cole leaned forward. You planted evidence against an innocent woman. You leaked our grandfather's company to our competition. You were willing to destroy a person who had nothing to do with you. All because you couldn't. Went stand watching someone else succeed. Marcus went quiet, and in that quiet, finally, he told the truth. Everything in this company should have been half mine. I spent my whole life, you spent your whole life waiting to take, instead of building, Cole said. That is not inheritance. That is envy. And I have nothing left to say to you. He picked up his phone. Franklin, call the lawyers. And call the police. Cole, get out of my office. Marcus left, and Cole sat alone, thinking about a woman walking out of his house with her back straight and her head up and her one suitcase, and the only thing she said to him, hope whatever you're protecting was worth what you just lost. He picked up his phone, and this time, he called her. Zara didn't answer. She was in her father's backyard, overalls, hair wrapped, hands in the soil, tending to his small garden the way she always did when she needed to think without thinking. Papa Joseph appeared at the back door. Zara, there's a car outside. She walked around to the front of the house. A sleek black car at the curb, and Cole Harrington standing beside it. No suit, no Benson, no security, no briefcase, dark trousers and a white shirt and nothing else. Just him. They looked at each other across the small front yard. Zara did not move. Can I speak to you? You drove 4 hours, she said. To speak to me. Yes. Then speak. He walked closer. He stopped a few feet away. He looked like a man who had prepared exactly what he wanted to say, and now that he was here, had forgotten all of it. It was Marcus, he said. He planted the evidence. Diana confirmed it. Shaw confirmed it. I should have known. I should have investigated before you asked me to leave. Yes, before you looked away. Yes. Silence. Cole. She looked at him steadily. I am not angry about the accusation. I am not even angry about being asked to leave. I understand the position you were in. Then what? I told you I didn't do it. I looked you in the eye, and I told you the truth. And I could see that you believed me. And you still chose the easier thing. You chose the paper over the person standing right in front of you. Cole had no answer, because she was right. Do you know what that feels like? To have someone see you, really see you, and then choose to look away anyway? I'm sorry, Zara. Simply, completely. No qualifications. No explanations folded into it. I have been afraid, he said, for a very long time, of trusting the wrong person, of letting someone close enough to hurt me, and when the house finally felt, he stopped. The flowers died, he said, 3 days after you left. Every single one. Benson wanted to replant them. I told him not to. Why? Because I wanted to remember what I did. The yard was quiet, birds somewhere, morning light on everything. Papa Joseph. Both of them turned. Her father stood in the doorway, completely calm, as if billionaires appeared in his front yard every day. Young man, have you eaten? Cole looked almost startled. Sir, I'm sorry to intrude. I asked if you've eaten. It's a simple question. No, sir, I haven't. Then come inside, both of you. He disappeared back into the house. Cole looked at Zara. She was almost smiling. You better come in, she said. He won't ask twice. Papa Joseph's kitchen was small. The table was small. The cups were ordinary. Cole Harrington, a man who owned buildings that cost more than most countries could afford, sat at that small kitchen table and looked, strangely, at peace. Papa Joseph cooked, Zara set the table, and the old man talked the way only fathers can, quietly, precisely, without cruelty, straight to the center of what mattered. He told Cole about the scholarship money, how Zara had been given a scholarship in university, money that was supposed to improve her own life, and she had used every cent of it for his treatment. Told it with the calm of a man who had found out years later from someone else, because Zara had never told him. Never. She will never tell you the things she does for people she loves, Papa Joseph said. That is her one flaw. She gives everything and tells no one. I am telling you because someone should. Cole looked at Zara. She was looking at her plate. Then Cole said something, quietly, steadily, looking at the man across the table. Sir, I cannot undo what I did. I cannot give Zara back the days she spent away. I cannot erase the moment I looked away. But I would like, if you will allow me, to try to be worthy of the trust I broke. Papa Joseph studied him. A long moment, the kind of silence that only very wise people are comfortable sitting inside. That, he said finally, is the first honest sentence you have said since you arrived. He placed a plate in front of Cole. Eat your food. After breakfast, Papa Joseph disappeared inside with the perfect, deliberate tactfulness of a man who knows exactly when to leave and exactly why. Zara and Cole sat on the back steps, looking at the small garden. What do you actually want? She asked. Not for the company, not for the will, for yourself. He thought about it, really thought about it. The way people do when they have spent so long not being asked that they have forgot they were allowed to answer. I want to have breakfast at a table that feels like this one, he said. I want to walk in a garden and say what I actually mean. I want to stop building walls and start building something worth living in. He looked at her. You said this house was beautiful but felt like a museum, like nothing alive was supposed to be there. Yes, I have been the museum, Zara, my whole life. And I don't want to be that anymore. The garden was quiet around them. A bee moved slowly through the flowers. I forgive you, Zara said. Cole breathed. The way a person breathes when they have been holding something for a very long time and finally, set it down. But slowly, she said. We go slowly as you need. And Cole, yes? The next time someone stands in front of you and tells you the truth, look at them. Don't look away. He held her gaze. Steady, unguarded. For the first time, I won't, he said. And in that small backyard, with the ordinary light and the small flowers, and the sound of Papa Joseph humming something in the kitchen, something began. Not a contract, not an arrangement, not a transaction. Something real, something chosen, something that had been building, quietly, stubbornly, against every odd, since the very first morning she watered dying flowers in a house that had forgotten what living felt like. 3 months later, the Harrington estate garden was something extraordinary. Every flower alive, every bed full, morning light across everything like the world had decided to be generous today. And in the center of it, a small wooden sign. Joseph's Corner. Papa Joseph sat nearby in a comfortable chair, a book open in his lap that he was not reading, watching something off in the distance with a smile of deep, quiet, complete satisfaction. Benson had told him later, privately, that Cole had planted every flower in that corner himself. Every single one, had refused the gardener, had gotten his hands in the soil on a Tuesday morning and not stopped until it was done. Papa Joseph had not said a word when he heard it. He had just nodded and smiled. The way fathers smile when they know their child is going to be okay. Zara walked through the garden slowly. She was back, but differently. Not as a contract wife, not as an arrangement, not as a transaction, as herself. She stopped at Joseph's Corner, looked at the flowers, touched one petal, gently, the way you touch something you can't quite believe is real. She heard footsteps behind her. She knew them. She would know them anywhere now. Cole stopped beside her. They looked at the flowers together. Good morning, he said, quietly. Good morning, she said, not dramatically, not with grand gestures, Not with the kind of ending that ties everything in a bow and pretends life is neat. Just two people, standing in a garden that was finally completely alive. The flowers were open, the house behind them was warm, and for the first time in a very long time, neither of them was alone. Some people walk into your life like a contract, with terms and conditions and an end date stamped at the bottom, and then something happens. The flowers bloom, the food gets cooked, the truth gets told, and you realize some things were never meant to end. This was the story of Zara Mitchell, a woman who walked into a stranger's house with one suitcase, honest hands, and a love for her father so fierce it changed everything it touched. She didn't set out to fix a broken man. She didn't set out to warm a cold house. She didn't set out to fall in love. She just watered the flowers and let the rest grow. If this story moved you, share it with one woman in your life who needs to be reminded today that her dignity is worth more than any contract, any arrangement, any amount of money in the world. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to forgive someone who looked away when you needed them most? I want to hear your story. New stories upload every week, right here on the Untold Tales. I will see you in the next one.